thanks for joining us today. Really excited to see everybody, to have a chance to interact, see each other, talk. Last time that we did this, we got some feedback that one of the really valuable aspects of getting people with like minds together, thinking about the challenges that they're dealing with, is having the opportunity to interact with each other, with people who have a common experience like achievers. So we're really excited for that opportunity again. So we are dispersed far and wide as a group of Bell Leadership folks, and we're really excited to be here with you. Today, what we'll be talking about is thinking about ourselves and solving problems. Something of a point of emphasis for many of us lately, particularly over the last 8 weeks or so, in how we're addressing problems, thinking about problems, etc. And before we get started with the content of the conversation, what I'd really love to know is how we're feeling right now. So us as a group of people together, what are we thinking about, feeling in the moment? I have a quick poll that I'd love to throw up for you guys. And we think about our problems and the challenges that are facing us, the opportunities. And so really quickly, I'm going to bring up a poll. If we can get that here, I'll find it really quickly. And 2 months into the coronavirus response, how would you best describe your current outlook or attitude? Select all that apply. So there's exasperated, resigned, optimistic, frustrated, exhausted, just a number of different options. How are we as a group feeling? And you can certainly choose more than one response. So an overwhelmingly optimistic response amongst our group. And that's amazing. It's really, and a varied other set of responses as well, where people, we all have a series really of kind of emotions and feelings associated with the context that we're living in now. What I'd love to do is share with you a quick screen share. And as I was thinking about today's session and kind of getting ready for what we're doing, in the end, thinking about how we all solve problems, how we feel about our problems. And I was running through my neighborhood just recently and came across this sign that some kids in our neighborhood have been putting up. They've been putting up these inspirational signs throughout the main parkway where there's like a bike path. And I came across it and I looked at it and I ultimately took a picture, and it really captured how I was feeling that day. It felt like we were in a new normal of sorts. We hear that word so frequently, and it's kind of an overused term. And yet talking to clients, talking with people, it felt like that some of the very immediate challenges that we started out with in the world of COVID-19 had waned to some degree. And we all had varied experiences on how to solve our problems and work through the things that we were in. And then the word repeat stuck out to me because things were beginning to feel set in. We were all in my conversations with people saying, another day like this, when's it going to end? And there also feels like, this picture was taken about a week ago, an overwhelming desire to think about how we can move beyond the current set of problems that we have. So what are we going to do? How are we going to move forward? And so today, what I'd love to do is think about, for all of us, what we know about effective problem solving. What have we observed? Things that we have been able to witness and see, how we solve problems, how people we know solve problems. Talking a little bit about the context of really, well, what is effective problem solving and how do we as individuals contribute to solving our problems? And then lastly, well, looking forward, if we have an optimistic outlook on things, if we want to know things will change, something will modify, things will be different, how can we best prepare ourselves for that? So the first question that I'd like to ask you is, so thinking about yourself and your experience most recently, go ahead, and if you have a piece of paper down, who would you say, looking around of all the experiences that you've had, is the person that you would come to mind who's done the absolute best at solving problems and kind of adapting to our recent changes? So you have somebody in mind that you have experience with, you've observed, you've seen, who's done an excellent job at solving problems? And what are, say, 3 reasons why you came up with that name? So take a second and jot that down. So really, what are you thinking? Who have you seen? You would say, yeah, this person has done a really good job at solving problems, adapting to what we as its culture or society have been dealing with. Give me a few moments to write that down. And then after you have that, is there someone that comes to mind that you would say has been less effective in adapting to changes and solving their problems? Not to be critical or say they're doing a bad job, but something about someone that came to mind that you thought, wow, John has done, he's not adapting extremely well. He's not solving his problems. And what are 3 reasons that you think that person has been unsuccessful in adapting to those changes or solving their problems? All right. Give us a few more moments. Really think through your experiences over the past 8 weeks or so. Thinking about our people and the folks that we are involved with, and the people that we've had a chance to observe. As I was thinking through the concepts of problems, the one thing that came to mind, and a number of the other folks at Bell Leadership, was the 100 problem days theory that Dr. Bell has talked about for so long. And for many of you, you may have heard it if you've been to Achievers or in some other program, but it's not something that we always cover. And so what I'd love to do today is talk about it, and then talk about the dynamics of problem solving as we're all looking forward to something in the future that will be different than it is today. And of course, all of us have different experiences with problems now. And so the 100 problem days theory, as I pull up a pen really quickly, 100 problem days theory is, in essence, a way to think about the question of, well, why is it that life is so hard? And if you think about it, we all have a set of problems and challenges every day, some different, some the same. And for each and every one of us, our problems tend to come up. And so if you think about, say, little kids at younger ages, they have a set of problems. And today their set of problems is different than they were 2 weeks ago, or 8 weeks ago, excuse me. So now little children all across the world are not with their peers in school. They're at home or in some other place. And so the set of problems that they have to deal with are distinctly different, but they still have them. And older children of some age, older adults, all of us, as we go through life, there's not a time frame or a period in which we don't have problems. And so for every one of us, when we think about how to solve problems, what it is that we need to do, how do we go about our day? Well, if you think about a typical day for each and every one of us, it starts with making 1 or 2 decisions. And 8 weeks ago, the decision was, what time do I get up and how do I drive to work? And what do I wear? Do I put on a tie today? And now it's, well, do I even put on a tie, or do I put on a t-shirt, or do I get out of my sweatpants today? Or how far is my walk from one side of my house to my bed to the office? Or do I log on to Zoom immediately or do something else? And each one of us is making choices as we go through the day. What do I do? How do I do it? And so just in the first few hours, you start solving a series of problems, some big, some small. And as we continue through the day, we continue solving problems. So some of us are essential workers, and so we're out in public. And what about my family? And should I interact with this person? Should I go to the grocery store today? Should I order it to have it delivered? Do I risk myself going to the convenience store to get donuts or gasoline for my car if I have to drive? What about my colleagues? I need to communicate with this person, and these folks I haven't talked to in a while, and this person over here, I need to make a decision. Do I call Bill or do I not? Each day, every one of our problems is a single event, and we continue solving them throughout the course of the day. And so say it's 3 o'clock and we're exhausted and we've done 16 Zoom calls, and now we have a set of other decisions to make. And do I work past 5? I'm here in my office. I've got kids who need something from me, or maybe my family is ready to have dinner, but I'm not, and on and on and on. And so every day, each and every one of us solve a series of problems. Why 100? Why do we say 100 problems? Part of that is that we have a capacity to be able to solve a set of problems. Have you ever had that experience, that feeling at the end of the day when you say, I'm out, I'm finished, I can't do it anymore, I don't want to solve any more problems, because you felt like you've done it all? And so some days are more and some days are less, and we all have different experiences with our problems. And so as we go through our time, we end up deciding and communicating with other people on how to solve those problems. So the 100 problem days theory, here's the thing. The inspirational part of our conversation today is that tomorrow we come back and we start all the way back over again. And so we have no hope. There's nothing left for us to do. This is, again, the inspirational part of the time. This is why you showed up here today, to hear about, well, tomorrow you're going to have 100 problems to go. And the reality is that when we think about us as leaders, how we solve these problems individually, each of us makes a significant difference. So for every one of us, how we solve problems, how we want to do it is we want to solve them effectively. And so when we study leaders, when we study leadership and really effective leaders, what we find is that highly effective leaders, highly effective problem solvers innately understand the 100 problem days theory. That in essence, for all of us, our job is to be as effective as we can solving problems. Because as soon as I get one taken care of, guess what? There's one right around the corner that I'm going to have to take care of. And so what we find is that there's, in essence, a pattern of problem solving with the people that we observe as effective leaders. And so many times there's a kind of a number step process. So the first thing that effective leaders do when solving problems, the very first thing is that they identify the problem. So they recognize the problem. That's a huge step to say something problem. And again, I use the word problem. We mean opportunities. You call them what we want, but we use the word problems just to describe something that we have to solve, a challenge in front of us, challenges, opportunities, problems, you name it. So I recognize it. I say, aha, there's something here that we need to do. What are we going to do when people come back to the office? What are the social distancing protocols? How am I going to allow people to work from home? These are big problems. So the first thing to do is to recognize it. The next thing that effective leaders do in solving problems, the next thing they do is they study the problem. They study it. They ask for input. They find information. They look around to see what the data points are in order to determine what that problem is and the nature of that problem. The next thing that they do is they make a decision. After studying it thoroughly, they make a decision on what to do, where we're going to go. This is the outcome that we want to look for in solving this issue. And then just simply making a decision isn't enough. They have to act, incorporate other people, find ways to do new things and act on the decision. And the final way in action is that they tend to communicate about their decision. They have to communicate with others about the decision they've made, why they've made that decision, how they've made it. And again, part of that data collection process is bringing people in to the conversation. And so we have a system for solving problems, the 100 problem days theory, and that we all have problems. And there are certain mythologies associated with problems that we can all get funneled into as a trap at times. One of those most pertinent to us now is that when I change a condition, I'll have no more problems. Ineffective leaders, ineffective folks who tend to not solve problems well, tend to expect not to have problems. And it's a trap. And so in 3 days, in a week, we'll have no more problems. In a month, our problems will be gone. Once we're back to work, everything will be normal. And so each of us has to understand that the problems are there. And really the only thing that we can do is greet them. And what Dr. Bell always says is, well, if you're going to have them, you might as well just say fascinating and keep on going. And so that's the terminology that we use when there's, hey, guess what? We're not going to have a program in March. You say, fascinating. What are we going to do? How are we going to move forward? Effective problem solving, the 100 problem days, is that even when we're back to work, even when people are back to the office or whatever it may be that's in our way, that we'll still be solving problems, some big, some small. And so now thinking about yourself as an individual, what would you say are the 3 ways that you typically respond in an effective manner? So if you're facing a problem, an opportunity, or a challenge, what do you do as an individual? So take a second and write that down. So how would you respond? What's your tendency? Where do you think the things that you do well in responding to problems? And then, after thinking about that, what are 3 ways, 3 actions, 3 behaviors that you have that tend to hold you back from solving problems? So 3 things that you could do a little bit more of or a little less of that make it a challenge for you to solve problems effectively. So really thinking about, how is it that I solve my 100 problems a day? What are the actions that I tend to take, the behaviors that I tend to use? With the last bit of time that we have, I wanted to talk just a quick bit about, well, what about our problems? What do we need to do? How can we solve them more effectively as individuals? If you guys remember the graph here, the 3 skills pyramid, and there are 3 sets of skills that we all use to solve our problems. If you can remember, the first of those are technical skills. Right? The technical skills are job skills, the things that we do. So if I'm a doctor, my ability to diagnose disease. If I'm an architect, my ability to design buildings, etc. Every job has a set of technical skills. Every problem typically requires a set of technical skills to solve it. The next set of skills that we use are our commitment skills. So our commitment skills, so our ability to be focused and disciplined and engaged and all in. And our commitment skills are vastly important in times like these, when we have unstructured time and new tasks and new responsibilities. How do we become committed to something different that we need to do? And the last set of skills that each of us uses to solve our problems are the personality and leadership skills. Our personality and leadership skills. And as you all know, Dr. Bell says we lead according to our personality. And as our problems shift, the sets of skills that we use to resolve and to solve our problems changes. And so, as each of you know, we have problems, opportunities, things that we have to deal with, and that our problems dictate the type of work that we do. So in our jobs and the work that we do, our problems shift. So what's the chance that your work has changed over the past, say, 2 months? To test that for all of us, what would you say the percentage of your daily task or your work that you're doing now has changed compared to 8 weeks ago? So 75%, 39% of the respondents said that their work has changed up to 75%. No one said it's all the same, which is fascinating. And so when we think about the type of work that we do, the types of work, the tasks that we have to do, the skills, the work that we have to do dictates the skills that we need. Our skills are dictated by our work. And so if you guys remember the conversation of the case of Sam's work changed as he grew throughout the organization, and his personality and leadership skills became more prominent. And it wasn't until way after the fact that he was able to reconcile that. For each of us, the work that we do has changed so that the skills that we need must change too. And so I was talking to a construction supervisor the other day who hasn't been through Achievers like you all, and we were working through some things, and he mentioned to me that, well, in the past, I used to be able to take the opportunity to sit down and basically do the things that I needed to do. I could basically command people into work. And he said, now I can't do that. So I have to lean on my skills as a communicator. I'm here at my office and I'm connecting remotely with the people that I work with. And so his work has changed. Some of it is the same, some of it is different, but the skills required are new. And so the skills that cause him to be effective in that role which of course is what we want, effectiveness, have changed. And so for each of us to be thinking now, if things have changed something in, there's some degree, 25% all the way up to 100% in the past 8 weeks, what's the likelihood that things will change again? And there's 100%. That the world will be different. The set of problems that we have to solve in the future will be vastly different than what they are now. And if you think back 8 weeks ago, many of the problems that you're solving today, you probably couldn't even think of 8 weeks ago. And so some problems at week 1 of the coronavirus changes, some of those problems felt drastic and different and new. And then now looking back on those problems, you thought, gosh, why did I make such a big deal of that? Or they could have been extremely impactful. But chances are 100% our problems will change. They'll move. And so as we continue to think about solving our problems, we remember that there are a set of core skills that each of us can harness, that each of us can look to solve our problems. So if I, high on entrepreneur, have a positive and optimistic outlook on the problems that I face, I look at them as opportunities, and I have a bias towards action to go forward and move forward and try to solve those problems. If I'm high on competitor, I tend to want to go forward and create value in the work that I do. I'm honest about what I'm doing. I'm forthright. I can go forward and say, this is important. We need to do this. And I can be convicted in that opinion. If I'm high on producer, I'm looking forward to action, to getting things done, to making sure that the results are important for what we get done. Next, stabilizer. High on stabilizer. I'm calm and in the moment and paced. I can look through the options and say, these are some of the things that we need to get done, not rushing to judgment. If I'm high on team builder, I'm incorporating others into my thinking, to my ability to challenge the problems that I have, bringing others in, being considerate of how those problems affect others. And then if I'm high on creator, I'm looking at it as an opportunity to change, to do things new, to think outside the box, to find other ways to thinking about solving our problems. There's a way, a method, an achiever problem-solving method. And if we were able to harness all the cores, we couldn't do much better than that. And so for each of us, as we're moving forward in a new world, to think about, well, what skills would it be most important for me to harness, to build in order to solve my problems effectively? And of course, it wouldn't be an achiever session without talking about extremes as well. And so for each of us, we tend to live in some version of our extremes at times. For some of us, it might be more often than previously because of the changes in circumstances. So if we think about our extremes, if I tend to be high on performer, I might rush to judgment and move too quickly, not consider the alternatives, kind of bias to going and not taking a paced and measured approach. If I'm high on attacker, I might tend to cast blame. Who did this to me? What happened? Why are you doing it? To seek to put blame on others instead of actively solving my problems. If I'm high on commander, I like to take control, to harness my ability to control everything and everyone around me to solve those problems, understanding that those aren't necessarily the most effective ways to solve problems. If I'm high on avoider, I tend to ignore the problem, look past it, say maybe it won't be a problem. Maybe we can just get beyond this. Or I'm slow to action, slow to move. If I'm high on pleaser, then I can tend to care too much about what other people think about my decision process. I want to make sure everybody's happy. And it can be difficult to make tough judgment calls and step out there and say, I think this is what we need to do. And if I'm high on drifter, I can tend to be scattered in my approach and not complete in thinking through things and jumping from one thing to the other, or maybe not even recognizing that there is a problem. We all can be advised of our extremes, to think about our extremes and how they impact our abilities to effectively solve problems. And so for all of us, as we know that our skills must change, to think about, well, how can we change? What can we do? What should we be doing? And so I'd like to give you, with just the last 2 minutes, a quick recommendation of sorts. If we know our problems will change and our work will change, and thus the skills we need to change, one of the most effective things we can do is to try to anticipate our problems. So thinking out 30 days, what are the 3 most significant problems that I'm going to face? What are some big ticket items that I will have to deal with? Maybe it's bringing people back into the office. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's changing the way that we do business or finding ways to social distance with my organization. Whatever those problems may be, to think about them and say, what do I anticipate those problems to be? And then what are the skills that I need to effectively resolve those problems? So it may be that I need to be more contemplative. I need to pause and think because I tend to rush to judgment. Or it might be that I need to give people autonomy to solve their problems because I can tend to be more controlling. The way that we solve problems and the way that we help our people solve problems is impactful for our organizations, our businesses, our communities, and our families. And so my challenge to everyone is to try to anticipate those problems and then think about the skills that you'll need in order to solve them. One last thing that comes to mind as well is a classic principle of Dr. Bell. He says, we cannot judge our past behaviors by our current knowledge. Chances are we've all made some decisions or tried to solve some problems that weren't effective in the past 8 weeks, or that we look back and we say, man, I could have done that a little differently. Ultimately, the only thing that we can do is learn from our experiences and apply that learning to the future of what we do. And so from us at Bell Leadership, we're so thankful for you all to be here, to be a part of this, and to spend some time talking with us about solving problems. And we know as an organization that your ability to solve problems makes a significant difference for your organizations and your communities. So with that said, I'll thank everyone on behalf of Bell Leadership for being here. We're so glad that you could have attended and spent some time with us. We're around. We love to hear from you. We hope to reach out and talk to everybody. And we certainly look forward to the time when we can all get back together in person and maybe even do an old-fashioned Southern mixer.